One of the most controversial aspects of Ninjago in its earlier seasons was definitely the love triangle, and for good reason, because it wasn't exactly handled all that well. And that in of itself is another video for another day, but the thing is that Ninjago seems to be very hard stuck in the idea of destiny, and it seems like to an extent, the love triangle was a part of said destiny. But what if that wasn't actually the case? And I have gone out of my way to ask that question for a lot of different aspects of Ninjago. And if you haven't seen my What If Ninjago series, please check it out if you haven't already. But in this episode, I want to talk about a different outcome when it does come to the love triangle. This isn't a case of me saying this is how I think it should have went, because again, that is another video for another time. But in this scenario, I did want to answer the question of, what if Nia picked Cole? And I will say, this isn't something that's overly large when it does come to Ninjago as a whole. I will say, I've covered a lot of what ifs that cover the entirety of the series. This one, for me, only really covers the seasons where we actually did get to see the love triangle. But I do have a very different scenario in mind, and let me know what you do think of it once you have heard me out. And if you have any what ifs you would like to see me do, please comment them down below. But let me not waste any more of your time, and let's talk about what if Nia picked Cole over Jay. Now, of course, like how the love triangle does begin, it does happen in Rebooted, and there is only one particular difference I did want to make. Of course, the whole point of the whole love triangle is that Nia in the end basically picks neither of them. She just leaves them both to it, and she wants to be more independent and more of her own person. But in my scenario, she does take what the love machine took to heart, and she did end up picking Cole. Whilst it wouldn't necessarily be outright covered in Season 3 because the whole point of the end of that season is Zayn's end, but the thing is that it would have established the fact that Nia and Cole would have given things a go, and we would have seen a much more bitter Jay, we would have seen a much more aggressive Jay, and we would have seen a version of him that just straight up didn't like either of them anymore. At best, he would ignore their presence, and at worst, he would be outright hateful towards them, and it would have been very interesting to see, and it would have given a very new side to Jay that would have been quite interesting to see. But again, it wouldn't really have shown much until Season 4. In Season 4, we would have had more scenes of Nia and Cole actually interacting. Before they took off the Chen's Island, we would have seen maybe a scene of Nia sending off Cole, a very nice interaction between the two, and we would have seen Jay being very bitter and very aggressive about it. Jay just wouldn't have even acknowledged their existence. The thing is that in Season 4, when Jay is still mad at Cole, he at least still has some interactions with Cole. There at least are some kind of back and forth between the two. But again, in this scenario, Jay wouldn't have even have entertained it. He just wouldn't have even acknowledged Cole's existence, and in his mind, for a very good reason. And this does come to the first major change for me, and that would have been the fight between Jay and Cole. Of course, in the show itself, this is the point where they reconcile. This is where Jay would have admitted that he was more upset about losing Cole over Nia. But in my scenario, this would not have happened whatsoever, and the fight would have played out very differently. It would have been a much darker tone in my opinion, because this fight wouldn't have had the two of them essentially become friends once more. This fight would have gone out to the very bitter end. There wouldn't have been no interaction between them. Cole may have attempted to plead with Jay, but in the end, I do honestly reckon that the fight between the two of them would have carried on and would have ended in one of them going out of the tournament a lot more legitimately than it was in the real show. And here's the thing, in this scenario, I do believe Cole would have won the fight. I think Cole very easily would have overpowered Jay like he did in the show itself. I think Cole would have been the ultimate victor, and Jay would have been the first of the ninja to have gone into the prison. And I do think that would have been a very interesting difference. But apart from the fact that Cole would have had Jay's role and Jay would have had Cole's role, the thing is that I don't think any other differences would have been the case. The only thing is that they would have continued to have not have spoken. I think Jay would have still have come up with the idea for some sort of device to get out, and also I think Cole would have still have been captured in the jungle like how Jay was. I think it would have had the exact same outcome, just with them both in different places. This again would have carried through towards the end of Season 4 when all the ninja are reunited, when they're all back together and they're coming towards the end of the threat of Chen. You would have still have seen Jay not interacting with Cole or Nia. You would have seen the team back together, which would have been great, but they just wouldn't have acknowledged each other in any way. I do think again Cole would have tried to have apologized for the fight. I do think there would have been some sort of attempt from Cole, but I think Jay would have continued to have been very bitter. I don't think he would have been able to let go of the grudge at this point in time. And that for the most part is season 4 to me. Like I said, the main thing is that Cole and Jay were basically role reversed. And I think it's really where you start getting into things towards the 5th season. Because this is where things start to have a major turn in my scenario, and it all comes down to the fact that Cole would have still have become a ghost. I think this would have been a very big changing factor for a lot of different reasons. We would have went into season 5 with Jay and Cole still not interacting with each other. They would have still been very bitter towards each other, but the thing is that Cole and Nia would have still been in their relationship. They would have been in a decent spot, but on an overall it wouldn't have really been too prevalent. At least until Cole became a ghost, like I said. I think Cole becoming a ghost would have been an extremely defining factor for both his relationship with Jay and with Nia, for a lot of different reasons. For one, I think this is officially the point in time where Cole and Nia's relationship would have gone to the side. I think Cole becoming a ghost would have been the factor that ultimately would have broken up their relationship, and honestly for good reason. Being a ghost would have had a lot of interesting complications, and you can tell that Cole wasn't exactly in a good place because he was a ghost. And I think just for the sanity of himself, and also because he would have wanted to protect Nia, he would have been the one to have called off the relationship between the two of them, and that would have ended their relationship from that point onwards. And unfortunately, it is a very bitter end to what could have been something good between them, but it would have been the case. The other big thing for me is that Cole becoming a ghost would have been the reason in this scenario for Jay to be able to get over his grudge. I think Jay would have seen the fact that he could have lost his brother by all accounts, and he would have wanted to be able to make things right. Because I think Jay would have had the line of logic of, if that was officially Cole's fate, I don't think he would have been able to forgive himself knowing he never actually spoken to him for a very long time. I think it would have been the place for a very good, emotional and deep scene between the two of them. Think of how when Cole was upset about the fact he was a ghost and Nia came in and reassured him. I'm thinking in this scenario, Jay is the one that shares that scene with him. Jay is the one that forgives him for everything that happened and gets Cole back on his feet so they can go up the Wailing Alps. It could have been a really cool scene, and it could have had a really good emotional beat to it, because like I said, you could have had Jay acknowledging the fact that he was scared about the fact that he could have lost Cole, and he realized that he doesn't want to be mad at him anymore, and that was the thing that made him realize it. And then you could have had Cole return with more of an apologetic feel as well. It could have been a really cool opportunity for the two to have spoken and had a really good reconcile between the two. Not only do I think it would have been a better solution to the whole Cole versus Jay arc, I do think it would have been just handled much better in this scenario, because it would have given so much more emotional depth to the whole case of Cole becoming a ghost. Because in the show itself, they don't really give it that much of a time to really simmer. We get maybe 1 or 2 emotional scenes, but this really could have been a chance for them to explore how Cole felt about it, and also how Jay felt about things as well. And ultimately speaking, just a really cool way to bring them back together. Not saying their fight in the Tournament of Elements was a bad thing, but I do think this could have honestly have been cooler. But that could have been where Cole and Jay begin to course correct. And from here onwards, they would play out things near enough the same as they do in the show. They would become best friends again, and it would have been a really cool and much stronger relationship because of the new foundation that it was built on. But that does leave one more factor. And that would of course be the case of Nia and Jay. I think Jay, after reconciling with Cole in this moment, he would have become just indifferent towards Nia. I think he would have spoken to her at the very least, but I don't think he would have given her as much attention as he probably would have wanted to. And I think it would have been an okay way to handle things from Jay's end, but also I don't think it would have been the best approach considering he just forgave Cole. But the thing is that there would be one defining factor that would change things for the most part, and that of course would be when Jay saw his future. He would have still seen Nia like how he did in the actual show, and it would have given Jay a bit of a shock to his system, because it would have taken Jay from the thought of, well, I've made good with Cole and I'm okay with Nia now, to, wait, there is still a chance. Because that is one still really big burning aspect. Jay never would have lost feelings for Nia, and I do think that would have been really interesting. And I do think having the future reflection be the thing that makes Jay realize that there could be something more still would have been really cool to have actually have seen. And that, for the most part, brings us into Season 6. In the show itself, Season 6 serves as a way for Jay and Nia to reconcile their relationship and become a couple once more. And in this scenario, this is what happens. But there is one more additive that I needed to give for this scenario, which is they're not only learning how to be in a relationship again, they're learning how to be friends again. Season 6 would have shown Jay becoming more friendly towards Nia, and Nia being more receptive than she is in the show initially speaking. I think in my scenario, considering everything that happened, Nia wouldn't have been so aggressive towards Jay, and the first half of the season would have covered the two of them just coming back to grips with actually talking to each other. It would have been difficult. I feel like there would have been a lot of acknowledgement of what have happened in the seasons before. I think Nia would have expressed some sort of resentment towards the fact that Jay forgave Cole much quicker than Nia. I think also Jay would have been quite bitter because Nia would have been referencing the fact that she was in a relationship with Cole. Because the thing is that whilst they're learning to become friends again, like I said, they're relearning the fact that they do in fact love each other. But that would come with complications, and I do think it would have led to some fantastic scenes. I think it could have led to Nia being upset over the fact of what happened with Cole. I think she would have acknowledged the fact that she was happy with Cole by all accounts. But the thing is that she would have felt like that time had passed, and there was something special with Jay, like how they did discuss in Skybound. And it would have been very emotionally driven. I do think it would have been a very interesting time for both of the characters, and it would have explored how they were feeling at the time specifically. I think it would have been really cool to have seen, because they could have done a lot with it. Like I said, they could have brought forward some more of a bitter aspect to it. There could have been more resentment towards it, and I do think it could have been very fun. I do think ultimately it would have still resulted in the same thing when it did come to Skybound, which is Nia and Jay ultimately do rekindle their relationship and they do end up becoming a couple once more. And that's why I said this is by all accounts a shorter what if, because at the end of the day, it is ultimately meant to come to the same conclusion because destiny did will it so. The fact is that Jay did see Nia in his reflection, and Nia did see the same thing the first day that they met, and that is something that you can't really counter. But the journey of how they got there, I do think could have been very much more interesting, and I do think ultimately speaking it would have been a much more emotionally driven story if my scenario did come to play, because it would have involved a lot more emotional beats with both J. Cole and Nia, and I do think it would have been very interesting to see. But like I said, Skybound does ultimately end with the two of them rekindling their relationship, and it would have been a very emotionally driven season at that. Like I said, I do think there was a lot of opportunity for really cool moments, and I do wish the actual show did take that and ran with it. But ultimately speaking, they didn't, and that is why a lot of people don't like the love triangle. But in the end, I do really like this what if. It's a much more of a sweet and warm ending, especially in comparison to the others, because a lot of my other what ifs end with the ninja meeting their demise, and this one is just a very nice rewrite of some of the seasons. But this is where I would like to know what you guys think. Do you prefer my more emotionally driven few seasons with a much more played out aspect to the love triangle, or do you prefer what we did get within the show itself? Personally speaking, I do really like mine. I do think it would have given a lot of opportunity for some really cool Nia and Cole scenes, and I do think it would have had much more impact and would have shown that those things do actually matter. And I do think ultimately speaking, it just would have led to a lot more better scenes. But again, this is where I would like to know what you guys think. Because in the end, Ninjago is ultimately what you make it. There is the show and there is that timeline of events, but you can always theorize on the what if. And that is what this series is ultimately about. And like I said, I would love to know what your guys' what ifs are in the comment section down below, because I would love to do more of these because they are really interesting. I can't lie, I really enjoyed this one. But thank you very much for watching the video, guys, and I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, please consider subscribing. It's so fun to have more people to discuss Ninjago with, and if you do want to support the channel further, which you don't have to, you could consider becoming a channel member, and you could join the Eternal Legends like Grandmaster Sensei 28208 and also World of Cards Entertainment. Thank you very much, my friends. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye!